International aid agencies have strongly condemned Israel's plans to expand its military operation and to take control of aid distribution in Gaza. The Israeli government said victory for Israel would see the entire destruction of the Gaza Strip and the removal of the population to other countries. Hamas has dismissed as pointless ceasefire talks with Israel, accusing it of waging a hunger war on Gaza as famine looms.
For 9 weeks since the collapse of a ceasefire, Israel has blocked all aid deliveries to the Gaza Strip. Humanitarian groups warn of widespread starvation as supplies run out.
The bottom line is that there's no aid to distribute anymore because the aid operation has been strangled by the closures. We have also heard from our colleagues on the ground that they observe people rummaging through garbage, trying to find something edible. So that is the harsh, brutal, inhuman reality of the situation.
It comes as an Israeli government minister said Gaza would be entirely destroyed and the population would leave in great numbers. Speaking at a conference at a settlement in the occupied West Bank, Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said Israel would finally conquer the Gaza Strip, adding we are no longer afraid of the word occupation. Yesterday, the Israeli cabinet approved plans to intensify its military assault, aimed, they said, at defeating Hamas and bringing Israeli hostages home. Proposals included handing control of aid distribution to the army and private companies. In response, Hamas said there was no point continuing negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage deal and urged world leaders to halt what it called Israel's starvation war. In comments at the White House last night, US President Donald Trump blamed Hamas for diverting aid from the population.
If you look, Hamas is making it impossible because they're taking everything that's brought in.
Mr. Trump is due to travel to the Gulf states of Saudi Arabia, Qatar and UAE next week, as prospects for peace in the region remain dim. Yvonne Moriarty, News, New York.
The Taoiseach has said the blockading by Israel of food and humanitarian aid to Gaza clearly constitutes a war crime. Michel Martin made the comments at the Global Ireland Summit in Dublin Castle. Earlier, Taoiseach Simon Harris said he was appalled and sickened by the situation in Gaza.
For more than 50 days, Gaza has been without food, medicines and essential supplies. An aid blockade and new Israeli plans to take over Gaza entirely, criticised by humanitarian groups. Today, the Taoiseach added his voice to concerns, telling the Global Ireland Summit he believes what is happening is a war crime.
It is simply wrong in principle and in law to inflict hunger and suffering on a civilian population, whatever the circumstances. This behaviour clearly constitutes a war crime.
The Taoiseach was afterwards asked what he believes will be Israel's response.
Israel will make its response and so on. I'm just calling it as I see it. I'm very taken back again, if one could even be at this stage. First of all, the blockade itself is appalling, but now the idea of an enforced occupation, a continued occupation, is unthinkable. And the people in Gaza, and the children in particular, it's the children that we're watching on our screens every night.
Taoiseach and Minister for Foreign Affairs Simon Harris earlier raised similar concerns, remarks likely to increase already clear diplomatic tensions between Ireland and Israel.
The scale of death and destruction in Gaza is almost unimaginable and is certainly unconscionable. We now have reports from the World Food Programme that food supplies are running out. Famine is a real risk for many Gazans, and children are even dying as we speak this morning. When people look back at this moment in history, they're going to look back and they're going to say the world did not do enough.
Taoiseach Micheál Martin's description of Israeli actions in Gaza as a war crime underlines Ireland's concerns over the situation in the Middle East, concerns which are increasingly to the fore of Ireland's foreign policy. Fia Crokiana, RTÉ News.
Now, returning to our main story, the situation in Gaza. Just before coming on air, I spoke to Jonathan Cric, Chief of Communications for UNICEF Palestine. I first asked him to describe the situation he is seeing in Gaza.
The situation is extremely dramatic. I arrived today in the Gaza Strip, and what I can see is that most of the market shelf, they don't they don't have anything. You have like a few potatoes, a few tomatoes, but that's approximately it. So clearly the food is not available. I was discussing with some of those market shopkeepers. They were telling me that approximately 5 kilos of potatoes, it costs between 70 and 80 euros. So of course, most of the vulnerable families, they definitely cannot afford that. So we are seeing an increasing number of cases of malnutrition among children. We have more than 9,000 children who are affected by acute malnutrition in the past months. So clearly we are extremely concerned by the situation. Children are hungry, they are thirsty, they don't have enough medical support, and all this goes on with continued bombardments and many children killed and injured. So we are extremely concerned by what we are seeing today in Gaza.
Now, there was some aid which got in during the period of the ceasefire, obviously, but that has been completely cut off for 2 months. How are your own supplies doing? I presume they must be running very low.
Yeah, they are almost entirely depleted. For example, when we talk about malnutrition, we have two types of supplies, those which are preventing malnutrition and those who are treating malnutrition. And we have completely run out of the supplies which are preventing malnutrition. And we are very close to be completely out of stock when it comes to the treatment of malnutrition. And we have to understand that these are very specific supplies, ready to use therapeutic food that must be administered under medical monitoring to the children so that they can regain their weight. So clearly being in that situation is it's absolutely dramatic for the mothers we see bringing their children who are hungry and acutely malnourished.
Now, Israel would claim that aid is being diverted by Hamas and used for its own purposes. What would you say to those claims?
I mean, we are operating here like we are operating everywhere in the world. There is no difference. So we have extremely robust monitoring system with third-party monitoring, with international staff accompanying the aid and allowing to actually really trace what is being distributed. I've been into so many food or medical supplies distribution, and we really see the families taking the supplies, the packages, and bringing them to the tents. I accompanied them. So the system of monitoring and overall processes is extremely robust.
Okay. And finally, Jonathan, you've spoken about malnutrition, and obviously the key thing is to keep children alive. But there are other effects on children. They aren't in school, most of them. They are suffering trauma from what's been going on. The effects of this will last a long time.
I mean, the effects, are absolutely huge. I mean, I was meeting with a mother who just had a baby, and she was struggling just to have, to keep the baby clean without any form of diaper, without enough water, without soap. So living in a makeshift tent on a little stretch of sand a few hundred meters from here. So the point I want to make here is that the entire living conditions are very dire, and malnutrition is also leading to a weakening of the immune system, and we see a lot of diseases appearing, and we are very scared because immunization is very low now among the babies and the young children. So we are very much fearing also the spread of diseases.
Okay, Jonathan Cric, Chief of Communications for UNICEF Palestine, thanks for joining us on 6-1.